I thought building a startup from scratch would be the hardest thing I'd ever do. I was wrong. The real battle began the moment my in-laws smiled at my first funding round. They praised me in public, called me a visionary at family dinners, while secretly rewriting my name out of my own company. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I watched, I recorded, I prepared. And when the investors invited me to speak at the Gala without them knowing, I made sure my silence was the loudest voice in the room. I built Rendex in silence. While others were shouting on panels, podcasting their every brainstorm, I was buried in code, structuring a neural network that could anticipate supply chain disruptions weeks ahead. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't loud, it was elegant, functional, and scalable, and completely mine. I'd been a solo coder for most of my 20s, burned out by VC boys clubs and dismissed as just technical. But when I met Elliott Ward, heir to the Ward logistics empire, he looked me in the eyes and said, "What you've built could change the entire industry. Let me help you bring it to light." We got married 6 months later. At first, his family welcomed me with open arms. His mother, Meredith, threw me a surprise party the day we closed our seed round, $2 million, entirely fronted by the Wards. His sister, Lila, offered to help with social media, branding, the stuff you hate. She laughed. And Elliott stood beside me like the perfect partner, praising my genius, encouraging my late nights, shielding me from investor meetings so I could focus. For once, I felt seen, not just used for my brain, not just tolerated in a room of men who didn't understand my vision, but celebrated. The only thing they asked of me, just one favor, Elliott called it, was to sign a temporary transfer of a small percentage of my shares. Just to streamline the legal process, he said. It'll help us protect the IP under family trust laws, tax stuff. You're still in full control. It's just paperwork. I didn't blink. I signed it the same day. Weeks passed and Rendex exploded. We hit product market fit faster than projected. One Fortune 100 logistics chain signed up for a 6-month trial. Our waiting list doubled overnight. While I stayed locked in the back end with my dev team, Elliott and his family offered to handle the front-facing load. They fielded media, gave interviews, attended networking dinners I had no interest in. I didn't mind. I preferred my keyboard. Then came the Forbes Women in Tech nomination, a PR dream. My email lit up with congratulations. But I wasn't the one on the article banner. It was Lila. She wore a pastel suit and a manufactured tech chic grin, posing in front of our company logo. The headline read, "Disrupting Logistics, How Two Visionary Women Are Revolutionizing Supply Chain AI." 2. I scrolled through the article. The quotes were hers. The story was hers. I was a footnote, a name mentioned in passing as the original developer. She was the co-founder with vision. I brought it up with Elliott cautiously. "She's just helping the brand," he said smoothly. "You hate press anyway. You said it yourself." "I didn't say I wanted to disappear," I said. He wrapped an arm around my shoulder. "You're still the brains. No one can replace you." But something in me tightened. A week later, while checking our shared team Slack, I noticed a system error notification from our legal folder. Curious, I clicked. Instead of our routine NDAs and contracts, I found a PDF labeled Cap Table, Investor Package. I wasn't supposed to see it. It was sent by mistake, CC'd to an old dev email I hadn't used in months. I opened it. There was no Julia Monroe on the founder row, no trace of the 80-hour weeks, the sleepless nights, the architecture I built from nothing. Instead, the founding team listed Elliott, Lila, and Meredith Ward. Lila held 35%, Elliott 40%. Meredith had advisory rights. The IP line, the very foundation of our tech, was attributed to Rendex Systems LLC, owned by the Ward Family Trust. I stared at the document for a long time, then I checked the date. The table had been created 4 months ago. Around the same time, I signed that temporary legal protection contract. My name had been ghosted from my own company. I didn't confront anyone, not yet. That was the old Julia. Impulsive, reactive, easily gaslit back into silence. This time I stared at the cap table long enough to etch every name, every percentage into memory. Then I opened my legal folder. Permissions I thought were mine were gone. Access to our IP registry was restricted. Even the code-based documentation now listed Lila as secondary technical architect. Lila couldn't code her way out of a WordPress theme. I searched deeper and found a quiet amendment filed months earlier. Joint ownership of core IP modules. My name was there, but not alone. It was tied, entangled with hers. Any future action would require co-founder approval. I didn't remember signing anything like that, but Elliot's voice echoed in my head. Just a temporary formality. My hands were shaking. This wasn't carelessness, it was a setup. At dinner that night, I asked Elliot, why is Lila listed as an IP co-owner on internal docs? He blinked once, too slow. It's just precautionary. The lawyers said having family involvement protects us during acquisition talks. You wouldn't want our tech to get caught up in bureaucratic reviews. Our tech? You know what I mean? I don't think I do. He took my hand gently. You're under too much stress. Don't spiral. Let us handle the messy legal stuff. You keep building the magic. That's your superpower. They weren't just erasing me. They were rewriting me. After that, I stopped using my work laptop for anything private. I set up a burner server, something no one else in the company knew existed. I copied over every contract, every timestamp, every version control log. If this was war, I needed ammunition. My code, my version history, my digital DNA, the truth. It was around this time I noticed patterns. Rendex had recently won 2 massive supply contracts, clients I didn't recognize. The terms were vague, the integration timelines impossibly fast. I wasn't looped in. I requested a breakdown from our ops lead. He ghosted me, so I checked the network logs. One of the contracts came from a shell company based in Belize. Another was tied to a firm blacklisted 3 years ago for compliance violations. Something didn't add up. I opened our procurement AI's behavior log. Someone had been rewriting its prioritization protocols, replacing my original logic with shortcuts designed to auto-approve vendors flagged for high risk. Rendex was being used to launder supply chains, and it was doing so under the guise of AI-driven automation I had supposedly built, and I should have been furious. But what I felt was colder, focused. The next morning, I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. We'd met at a cybersecurity boot camp back when I still thought justice could be built with code. His name was Marcus Yen, a whistleblower turned hacker who spent time in federal prison for leaking a tech conglomerate's use of AI to profile vulnerable users. Some called him a traitor, others a necessary villain. I just remembered he once told me, "Truth has no API, you have to build it by hand." I found his encrypted contact channel, left a single message. 3 hours later, I got a reply. We met in an underground cafe downtown. No small talk, just laptops. I heard about Rendex, he said, sipping espresso. It's cleaner than I expected. Too clean, that's the tell. They're using my face to clean dirty money. He nodded. It's a pattern. They call it founder laundering. Tech startups fronting for legacy systems. They embed your name, your story, then hijack the back end to move capital. I showed him the modified protocols. Your code's been forked, he said, but sloppily. Probably by someone non-technical. That helps. I exhaled. Can you help me trace the money flow? He slid a USB across the table. This installs a backdoor monitor. No edits, just watches. If you're right, it'll light up like Christmas. I picked it up. And if I'm not? Then you've got nothing to lose. He leaned in. Your company is a mask. Are you ready to rip it off? Marcus's software worked like a lighthouse in a storm. Within 48 hours, I had a full trace of outbound transactions, buried inside vendor payments and consulting retainers. Every trail led back to companies with familiar names, subsidiaries of Ward Logistics, shell entities tied to Elliot's cousin's venture fund, a consulting group run by Meredith's old college roommate. It was a spiderweb designed not to hide, but to appear so clean, so corporate, that no one would think to question it. Rendex had become the glossy AI-labeled front for their family business, a facade to pass compliance, win green incentives, and shield their legacy pipelines from scrutiny. But that wasn't the worst part. They were using Rendex not just for laundering, they were using it to trap other startups, real founders into impossible service contracts. The fine print buried debt acceleration clauses, forcing these small companies into lifelong integrations under automated compliance, all powered by the very engine I built. My code had become a cage. I exported every contract, every timestamp, every redirect log. I encrypted it in 3 layers and hid it on a private server overseas. But the moment I tried to access our admin dashboard to review internal approvals, I got an error. Password invalid. I tried again. Access denied. My account had been revoked. Minutes later, I got a Slack message from HR. Hi, Julia. We've been advised to limit internal admin access temporarily while we prepare for the upcoming Gala. Let us know if you need anything funneled to your team. It wasn't just about control anymore. They were isolating me, airbrushing me out bite by bite. Then came the final twist. A junior dev, someone I mentored, forwarded me a screenshot. Just thought you'd want to know, she wrote. It was an internal memo sent to the event planning agency. Keynote speaker, Meredith Ward. Topic: The Rise of Women-Led Tech, presented by Rendex. I laughed. I actually laughed. It was the kind of laugh you let out when you're so far past betrayal that rage feels like theater. They weren't content to erase me quietly. They were weaponizing my silence. Meredith, who still typed with 2 fingers, who once asked me what back-end meant, was going to stand on stage and claim the revolution I bled for. So I disappeared. 3 days. No updates. No Slack. No email replies. I let them think I was broken. Meanwhile, under the pseudonym Jane Nova, I uploaded a 256-page report to the SEC's whistleblower portal. It included code snapshots, transaction records, shell company diagrams, IP transfer history, and even Slack messages where Meredith called me too sensitive to handle real business. Then I sent a separate copy, heavily annotated, to a media outlet known for investigative tech journalism. But that wasn't all. I booted up a clean OS, cloned the original Rendex architecture, stripped away every overwritten module, and restored my earliest Git commits. The real version, the version without manipulation. I rerouted the new fork through an encrypted domain and registered the IP under my own name. Julia Monroe. No co-signers, no permissions. My company had already been taken, so I built a better one, secretly, silently. Gala Day arrived. I wasn't invited, of course, but I knew where it was being held. I walked into the building through the loading dock wearing a black turtleneck and blazer. Unremarkable, unbothered. The main ballroom was packed. Investors, journalists, tech bloggers, all sipping wine and nodding to background jazz. Meredith stood near the stage, holding note cards, practicing lines I could almost predict. I didn't interrupt her. Instead, I walked to the media control room. The AV intern was distracted, watching YouTube on his phone. I asked him where the feed was wired. He pointed. I smiled. I plugged in my laptop. The screen flickered once. At 7:02 p.m., just as Meredith stepped to the podium and greeted the crowd, the main projector blinked. The Rendex logo vanished. In its place appeared my face. I stood in the building's side hall, holding my phone, streaming live. "My name is Julia Monroe," I said. "And this is what they didn't want you to know." The room fell silent. On the split screen behind Meredith, the audience watched the Rendex logo glitch, then fracture into shards of static. A second feed took over, the one streaming from my phone, my face live, calm, not vengeful, not bitter, just factual. I built Rendex, I said, line by line, brick by brick, and this is what they did with it. The screen changed. Slide 1. The falsified cap table with metadata timestamps showing edits made weeks after I signed that so-called protective agreement. Slide 2, internal emails. Meredith's own words. She's too focused on code to notice we've sidelined her. Lila's reply, as long as she keeps her head down, she doesn't need to know. Slide 3. Financial flows from shell companies routed through consulting retainers, back toward subsidiaries, overlaid with my original contract where I had explicitly rejected vendor partnerships with any unverified entities. Slide 4. A diagram of the forked AI with a line in bold, my code logic, rewritten by a junior analyst, enabling auto-approval for flagged vendors. Each slide landed like a silent explosion. At first, there were gasps, then whispers, then phones came out. Meredith froze mid-sentence. Someone from the back shouted, "Is this real?" An investor stood up and walked out. Another turned to his assistant. Cameras swiveled from the stage to the projection. My voice kept playing. Calm, steady. I didn't come here to beg for credit. I came here to warn you. This isn't just about one startup. This is a pattern, a system. Founders turned into logos. Innovation turned into front. Behind every female face you see on a banner, ask who's behind the curtain. Elliot stormed into the control room 20 minutes later. His face was pale, tie loosened, sweat beating at his temples. "Turn it off," he hissed. "Now." The intern stepped back. "She's streaming directly. It's not from our system." Elliot turned to me. "Julia, please." "Too late," I said. "It's already mirrored. 10 nodes. You can't shut them all down." He reached for my laptop. I didn't move, just stared at him. "This is what happens," I said softly, "when you build on someone else's silence." That night, the gala didn't finish. Press exited in swarms. Hashtags trended within minutes. One ghost founder, Rendex exposed, Mask Tech. By morning, my inbox had 5 interview requests from the New York Times, 2 from BBC and 1 from a documentary filmmaker. I declined them all. Instead, I met Marcus at a rooftop cafe, overlooking the city. "They're burning," he said, passing me a flash drive. "SEC?" I asked. He nodded. "Your submission was airtight. They've frozen Ward Logistics accounts pending investigation. And the shell companies, they're flipping. Nobody wants to be the last one holding the bag." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. There was too much wreckage to sift through. I was technically vindicated, yes, but I wasn't whole, not yet. The investors who'd once ignored my emails now called me visionary. Analysts debated my ethics, my methods, whether my live stream set a dangerous precedent. I tuned them out. Instead, I built. Marcus and I formed something new, a decentralized collective, not a company, a network of women like me, founders who'd been sidelined, CTOs ghosted after MVP, engineers whose names were buried under marketing decks. We didn't seek press, we sought precision. Our first launch was a watchdog platform, SourceLight. It analyzed cap tables, legal metadata, founder attribution. If someone tried to ghost a creator, SourceLight flagged it, publicly. Within weeks, 2 high-profile exits were reversed after SourceLight exposure. Suddenly, it was harder to steal quietly. But just when I thought I could breathe, I got an email. No sender name, no return address, just a sentence. "Not all masks were yours to remove." I stared at the screen for a long time. And then, for the first time in weeks, I felt a shiver. The lawsuit arrived on a Monday, a thick envelope stamped by the Ward's legal team, accusing me of defamation, sabotage of investor relations, and reckless dissemination of private company data. The language was cold and surgical, but the intent was obvious: crush me. They demanded millions in damages, alleging my actions had irreparably damaged the family's legacy and financial standing. I stared at the complaint for a long time before sliding it into a drawer. The phone rang for hours that day. Journalists, lawyers, investors now worried their names might be entangled in a scandal bigger than expected. One caller, a venture partner who once brushed me off in a meeting, offered to mediate if I agreed to retract the live stream and apologize publicly. I hung up. Outside, people cheered me on. Online, hashtags praised my bravery. But in private, the silence grew louder. Threatening messages began appearing in anonymous inboxes. My home address was leaked. Drones hovered outside my window. Someone keyed my car. And then Marcus vanished. He missed a meeting. Then two. I tried his secure line. No response. A week later, SourceLight servers were hit by a coordinated DDoS attack. The signatures were polished, corporate grade. Someone wanted him gone. I was on my own again. I rebuilt SourceLight from an offline backup, hardened the encryption, and rerouted all financials through new blind trusts. Every account I touched, I treated like a war zone. Two-factor authentication, cold storage, split credentials. And that's when I found it, buried in an old contract folder in a PDF labeled Temp Auth EP Trust. The agreement Elliot gave me a year ago, the one I signed without reading when I was still starry-eyed and grateful. It wasn't temporary. It wasn't protective. It was a permanent IP assignment to a trust owned entirely by Meredith Ward. The lines blurred. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My code, my architecture. My voice, my vision, my hands, legally they owned all of it. The whistleblower victory, it could be framed as an attack against their own property. I hadn't just been written out. I had unknowingly handed them the pen. I spent 3 nights without sleep, rereading every clause. And then I found it. Clause 8.3. In the event that the trustee materially misrepresents the purpose or intent of the assigned IP, the assigner retains the right to revoke said transfer, provided written notice is filed within 365 days. I checked the date of the live stream, day 362. I filed the notice that morning. The ward's lawyers tried to block it, of course, called it invalid, desperate, reactionary. But the clause was airtight, and the digital trail even cleaner. Every misrepresentation, every proof of their fraud was now the key to unlocking what they stole. The irony was poetic. By Friday, the lawsuit was dropped. But I wasn't done, because something kept gnawing at me. A detail I hadn't looked at closely. During the investigation, one of the flagged shell companies wasn't owned by the wards. It was tied to an entirely separate venture group. I ran a trace. The trail led back to Blackbriar Capital, Elliot's college roommate, a group that had once pitched Rendex a buyout offer 6 months before the family turned on me. I had rejected it immediately. The valuation was insultingly low. But what I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that the group had ties to the wards. Deep ones. Emails surfaced. From Elliot to a partner at Blackbriar. Subject line, she's nearly isolated. One message hit like a blade. If this works, she'll have no choice but to sell. We keep the platform, shed the face, and rebrand. Clean slate. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had plotted my erasure with people who planned to rip the soul out of what I built and sell it in pieces. I stood on the balcony of my apartment that night, the city lights stretching below me like circuitry, pulsing. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was done playing defense. This wasn't about my company anymore. It was about the system, about the masks and mirrors, the trust funds and token diversity hires, the puppets propped up for applause while real innovation got stolen, sanitized, and sold. They called it business. I called it war. The next morning, I pulled up a folder I'd been building since the beginning. Ghost Protocol. Names, dates, startups, every instance of founder laundering I'd come across during SourceLight's first sweep. whispers from founders too scared to speak, patterns, the same techniques, the same signatures. It wasn't just the wards, they were part of something bigger. And now I was going to burn it down. The manifesto dropped at 9 a.m. sharp on a Thursday. It wasn't flashy. No dramatic titles, no angry rhetoric. Just facts, code, diagrams, and stories. Anonymous accounts from founders like me, stripped of credit, rewritten out of their own narratives. Alongside them, I embedded a new tool, a public algorithm called Vindex, a machine learning model designed to analyze startup legal documents and identify patterns of ghost founding, fraudulent equity structuring, and artificial co-founder inflation. The report was titled, "The Voice Print: How Innovation Gets Silenced." Within 12 hours, it went viral. Tech blogs ran headlines, "The Code Behind the Curtain," "Founders Without Faces," "Julia Monroe Exposes the System." VCs went quiet. Some issued preemptive statements. Others deleted tweets that once praised diverse leadership with suspiciously blank bios. Forbes republished their profile of me, this time with my face on the cover. But I didn't answer any interview requests. I wasn't interested in telling the story again. I had already told it. Now it was time to do something with it. Instead of fighting to reclaim Rendex, I built something new, Signal Root. It wasn't a company. It was a living system, an open-source protocol designed to validate and archive true innovation at the source. Every commit was fingerprinted to its creator, every document version locked to original authorship. Smart contracts ensured founders couldn't be silently edited out post-funding. It didn't just protect IP, it made invisible labor visible. We launched with zero PR, just code. But within weeks, startups began adopting it. Investors who once manipulated founder rosters suddenly had to face immutable ledgers. Signal Root became not just a tech tool, but a cultural one, a line in the sand. I stayed behind the curtain, published only under initials, let the network speak for itself, until the email arrived. Subject line, TED 2026, Main Stage Invite. Topic: Credit, Control, and the Price of a Name. Ms. Monroe, we believe the world is ready to hear your voice in your own words. I stared at the screen for hours. Then I clicked, Accept. 2 months later, I walked onto the stage in Vancouver. The auditorium was dark, the spotlight cold. I wore no makeup, no jewelry, just a black shirt, plain jeans, and a mic clipped to my collar. No one flanked me. No one waited behind the wings to claim my words. I looked out over the sea of faces and said, when I built my first company, I thought the hardest part would be building the technology. I was wrong. The hardest part was holding on to my name. Silence. Then breath. I was erased not because I wasn't good enough, but because I was quiet enough to be convenient, because I didn't like press, because I focused on the work, and because I trusted the people who told me, don't worry about the paperwork. We've got your back. I let the words settle. Then I lifted the small device in my hand. This, I said, is a voice print scanner. It was originally designed for security access, but we've retooled it. Now it captures code commits, design drafts, early sketches, any form of original creative work, and fingerprints them to their creator, irreversibly, so that your silence doesn't become their signature. A murmur spread. Today, you might be a solo coder, a first-time founder, an engineer in someone else's shadow. You might not want fame. You might not want to fight. That's okay, but your work deserves to be named. And you deserve to decide what name it carries. I paused, looked into the crowd. I didn't just build a company. I dismantled a lie. Applause rose, hesitant at first, then tidal. Not because I was loud, but because the silence finally broke. When I stepped off stage, I didn't look back. Outside the auditorium, I passed a girl in her 20s, sitting on the floor near the exit with a laptop open and fingers flying across the keyboard. As I walked past, I caught a glimpse of her screen, a project labeled BioTrace. She didn't notice me, but she looked up just before I disappeared into the hallway and smiled. In her notebook, I saw a single handwritten line. "Don't let anyone take credit for your fire."